Welcome to the Museum of Aquarium and Pet History. It's March 2023. I'm super excited because today we're talking about the most iconic fishbowl ever produced. That's the Rubaromic Fishbowl. Now, just to give you an update, I was going to wait on this Rubaromic talk, but what happened was an ad came out in Antique Trader magazine, or actually Main Antique Digest, for Rubaromic for sale. This is a lifetime collection of Jack Wilson, and I know Jack Wilson. In fact, I got a very rare piece of Rubaromic because of him, a fishbowl piece. So I just thought, wait a minute, we should do Rubaromic. So that's what kind of started it, got me into like putting this video together, which has got a lot of parts to it. So bear with me, because we're going to talk about what is Rubaromic, how it came about, what are Vaseline fish bowls. We're going to go through the whole gamut. So hit pause, get yourself something to drink, and let's go. All right, so Jack Wilson is probably the pinnacle of knowledge of Rubaromic. He has one of the largest collections. He's getting up there in age, so he's put it up for sale. It's on the internet, and we have that information. It's going to come at the end of our video. In fact, at the end of our video, we're going to have 3 short videos that Jack did on Rubaromic glassware and the history of Rubaromic, as well as his personal collection. So make sure you stay till the end to see the short videos that Jack did as well. So Rubaromic was created by Reuben Haley. Reuben Haley worked as a designer for Consolidated glass. And in 1928, they created this line called Rubaromic, completely out of the box, angular. They called it cubism in glass. So think about Picasso's Cubist paintings and think about putting that into glass. And that's what they did. It got so much press because it was so unusual that it just became like the pinnacle of the Art Deco movement for the time period. They released it in 1928. And in 1929, the Great Depression hit. And in 1932, Consolidated closed for 4 years. And when they reopened, there was no more Rubaromic. They had basically finished the line. So whatever's out there, the small number, was created only in a short window of time during the Great Depression, during the pinnacle of the Great Depression. So, with that said, what is Rubaromic? It's an epic in modern art, is what they called it, because of the angular shapes. They said, why should a vase be round? Why should, all these things just be cylindrical? Why can't they have different angles to them? So that's pretty much what they were telling the press. How Reuben Haley designed it was pretty interesting. He found a piece of plaster on the floor of his studio. He started whittling away at it, and he came up with like a Rubaromic glass. And so that kind of led to him creating an incredible line of Rubaromic plates and whatnot. Now what's interesting is, although Reuben, the designer, created the Rubaromic line, he didn't create the fishbowl. No, his son, Kenneth Haley, created the fishbowl. And he did it later, like in about 1932. And I'd love to be a fly on the wall, having Kenneth talking to his father and saying, hey, I want to do a fishbowl because fish are all the rage. These goldfish bowls and these stands, they're all the rage right now. So I want to create this Rubaromic fishbowl. And of course, being that Reuben was the head designer for Consolidated, he said, sure, why not? And so Kenneth created it through Phoenix glass. So Phoenix actually made the Rubaromic bowl. It wasn't Consolidated, it was Phoenix glass. That's important to know if you're collecting, because you want to know really where the glass came from. And all the Rubaromics came from Consolidated except the fish bowls, and that was from Phoenix. So how many were produced? Jack Wilson says probably 25 to 30 pieces were produced. We don't really know. I know that some of them have a 1928 copyright or patent pending on the bottom. This one does not. So it's interesting that they did put a patent number and date on the bottom of some, and some don't. So I don't know what that says. whether they had 2 production runs and they didn't on the second production run. That leads me to believe that maybe they did more than 25 or 30. Maybe they did 50 or 100. I don't know. There's very few left in the marketplace. One of the estimates is there's maybe a dozen or so left out there, and of those dozen, only 6 have stands. And you probably wondered, like, why so few? Well, number one, it was really expensive, very expensive bowl to buy. And number two, people probably broke the bowl when they were trying to wash it, because how do you wash a bowl like this? You know, I mean, to me, if I was going to wash it, I'd take it out on the lawn and wash it with a hose. I wouldn't wash it in a sink because I would definitely break it. And the third thing, why the stands didn't survive, was the war effort. During World War II, they had all these metal drives. So if you had a stand in your house that had no bowl because the bowl cracked, it was patriotic to take your metal to the war drives. And that's what they did. So they took the stand and they donated it, and they're made into tanks and jeeps and everything else for World War II. So that was that's really the 3 things that are contributing to the fact that there's not many of these around. In fact, all fish bowls and stands are not common. There was only about no more than a dozen manufacturers of stands, no more than 6 manufacturers of fish bowls during that time period, the 1920s to the 1930s, which is really considered the Art Deco period. It was also considered the Depression era. All the way up to 1930 was a Depression era, even though the Great Depression lasted like 4 or 5 years. It really went on till the beginning of World War II. So none of them are common. No fishbowl and stand is common, and this is probably one of the rarest. It's certainly the most desirable, the one that people really want for their collection. There's 2 museums that have these bowls, the fishbowl, and that is the Chicago Art Museum, and the second one is the Coffeyville Historical Society in Coffeyville, Kansas. That is the second museum that has a Rubaromic fishbowl. There's also a few museums that have collections of Rubaromic. That would be the Denver's Kirtland Museum in Denver, the Boston Museum of Fine Art, and the Carnegie Museum in Pittsburgh. So if you're looking to see collections, you can also go to those 3 museums. Or you can just watch Jack's video at the end of this, and you could see his collection, which is probably the largest in the country. I think he has like 400 pieces of Rubaromic, which is pretty spectacular. All right, so let me talk a little bit about Vaseline glass, because as you noticed, it's got this yellow kind of a translucent glow to it. So Vaseline glass was popular in the 1920s. They made lots of colored glass in fish bowls. They made blue glass, they made amber glass, they made green depression glass, that's what they called it. What made the Vaseline glass was they added uranium to the mixture, and it gave it a glow. In fact, it glows under black light because it has uranium in it. Do they still make uranium glass? Yes, they do. Even to this day, you can buy uranium glass. Believe it or not, it's still out there. Is it dangerous? Well, okay, the articles say that it's not dangerous, that it doesn't have the kind of uranium that's super dangerous, and it also doesn't have any more than you get out of natural sunlight. So we bought a Geiger counter and we tested our bowls, and we registered what they came on the Geiger counter, and we went outside and tested it under natural sunlight during different times of the day, and really we got about the same. So honestly, the bowl gives off no more radiation than sunlight does if you just walked out into the sun. So I can't say whether or not it's dangerous or not dangerous, because I don't want to say that. You can decide for yourself. You could read the articles on Vaseline glass. It's also called uranium glass. The reason they called it Vaseline glass was because in the 1920s, Vaseline had an eerie yellow glow to it. Okay, now that was really old Vaseline. It's not that way today, but it had this glow. So they kind of nicknamed it Vaseline glass. But the more correct term is uranium glass, because some of the green bowls actually had uranium in them too, and they also glowed. And there probably is a couple of amber bowls that also had uranium in them. So that's the glass. The other question you might ask is, well, how do I see the fish? Well, you have to realize the Chinese, which have kept goldfish for a few thousand years as pets, never kept them in a clear vessel. They kept them in a ceramic pottery, and you only looked at them from the top. And if you think about it, if you go to the side of a stream or a lake or anything where you are looking at fish, you're looking down on them while they're in this big vessel of water. So that's kind of the way the Chinese think, is they think, well, that's natural to look down on the fish, and the fish feel more secure not having people see them from the sides. So that's kind of the mindset back then was, look, you're going to see the fish as objects, which are going to really become part of the stand. But if you want to see them clearly, you can just look in through the top. So I thought that was kind of interesting. They had their whole mindset about, that really the piece of art and the fish were one. They weren't separate. Really the fish and the art kind of came together to give you an experience that was very different during that time period, during the Art Deco phase of the 20s and the 30s. It's a shame that the stands are so rare, and it's a shame that so few of them survived, especially the bowls. I find that for every 10 stands that I find or have found over the last 45 years of collecting, I find maybe one bowl. So that's one original bowl per 10 stands. That's how rare they are. I think in the museum we probably have 100 stands, and we probably have maybe 12 bowls that go with those stands. Now we have other bowls that are just separate green or Vaseline bowls, but not ones that go with the fishbowl stands. We have maybe a dozen. So that's how rare they are. So the other thing about during this time period, the 1920s and early 1930s, was goldfish was the rage. I mean, it was huge, keeping goldfish. Not just for, kind of like keeping a canary in the house was a big deal, but keeping a goldfish bowl was also a big deal. It was really part of your decoration. And during that time period, there was over a dozen goldfish farms that just raised goldfish. Not tropical fish, not cold water food fish, just goldfish. Let me name some of those fish farms back in the 20s and 30s. We have Grassy Fork, the most famous. We have Ozark, which is still in business and actually bought out Grassy Fork in the 1970s. We have Pacific Goldfish Farms. I remember them as a kid. We have William Tricker. We have Slocum Water Gardens. We have Loveland Goldfish Farms. We have Paradise Gardens, Three Springs Fisheries, very popular place, and I think they're still in business. Lakeview Ponds, Joseph Ling Aquatic Gardens, Zet's Fish Hatchery, Autumndale Goldfish Company, very famous, went for a long time. Mount Purnell Fisheries, believe they're still around, and Hiram People Fisheries, also still around. So that's just amazing that some of these goldfish farms are still here 100 years later, and we had so many of them back then. That's how popular goldfish were. So that's pretty much the Rubaromic stand, or the Rubaromic Goldfish Bowl. Now let me talk about the stand. The stand was made by Howell. Now the glass companies did not make the stands. Glass companies made glass, and art metal companies made stands. This was made by the Howell Art Metal Company, and it was made for the Rubaromic Bowl. In fact, it's angular in shape at the top, so it fits the bowl perfectly. It's pretty amazing. It's interesting because the design looks Egyptian Revival to me, which was very popular during the 1920s, and but it does fit into that Art Deco style. It's a very heavy stand, well made, and Howell also made a similar stand that went with a cylindrical bowl with a rounded bottom, which we call the Goldfish Petting the Pelican. So that was the other stand that Howell made that was very similar to this one. We're actually going to put on the video a picture from the Howell's catalog, and Howell actually sold the stand and the bowl. I've never seen the stand and the bowl sold through the pet channels during the 1920s or 30s. It was sold through Howell, or according to Jack Wilson, it was sold through like Marshall Field's of Chicago, like really high-end department stores. And they made so few, it would have to be a high-end department store for how much it cost. In the Howell catalog, it was the most expensive item. It was more expensive than anything they had in the entire catalog. So that is the Howell stand. It's pretty spectacular, and it actually really fits with the bowl. In fact, I'll show you. I think you saw it earlier, but you have to spin the bowl. I know you're kind of like dying. You're like, oh, don't break it. Which is true, I don't want to break it. There you go. So you can see, you have to get it right to the right spot, and it fits perfectly. Now, just a word to the wise, if you have stands and bowls, always put felt in the bottom of the top of your stand in the cradle. You want to lay down a lot of felt because you want the bowl to touch felt, not the raw metal. Metal expands and contracts with temperature, not good for the bowl at all. You also might notice that there's a bubble here, and that's pretty common in fish bowls. You know, obviously they're not perfect when they blow these, and you'll get a bubble. What's amazing is how in the world did they get this incredibly angular bowl out of the mold. I know a little bit about mold casting and whatnot, and I think that would have been a nightmare trying to get something so large out of a glass mold. So that's the Rubaromic bowl and stand. Now, to give you a little bit of a surprise, we're going to talk about the other Rubaromic bowl. This is a smaller version. The cubist design was from Kenneth's father, Reuben, but Kenneth was the one who made the smaller bowl as well at Phoenix Glass. And he made we didn't make the polar bear, but the polar bear was made through Rosaware. And that's what I could find so far. Is Rosaware was a company in the 20s and 30s and made this kind of decorative type of thing. Now, I want to tell you about the material because both Jack Wilson and I got it wrong. When we talk about the polar bear stand, Jack said it was made out of alabaster, and I thought it was made out of porcelain because I thought something so elaborate and so expensive, it's got to be porcelain. It can't, and I didn't think it was alabaster. There's very few alabaster stands out there. So when I got it, I was shocked. It's made from chalkware. And you could see the chalkware, you know, little blips here where the chalk is showing through. And then you could see at the bottom, there is one little thing here, one little cave, but it's pretty much flat, which is typical of chalkware. Chalkware is plaster of Paris. It's also called poor man's porcelain because it's very easy to pour in the mold and to take out of the mold pretty much. I mean, this piece is pretty big, so this would be a little more difficult to take out of the mold. But I'm sure that Kenneth, when he went around shopping, or the idea for this, it might have came from Rosaware. Rosaware might have come to him with this idea and pitched it to him, and he just decided to go with it. Or maybe he came up with the idea and he shopped it at some of the porcelain factories like Weller and didn't like Weller's price because Weller's the only one who really made fishbowl stands back in that era. So went with Rosaware because I bet it was a lot cheaper. The only place I've seen that sold this bowl and this stand was Henry Bishop. Henry Bishop was the Birdman. He had tons of catalogs out from the 1800s up to about the 1930s. This came out in 1932. I know that because I have most of Henry Bishop's catalogs, and I looked from 1928 up to like 1935, and it was in the 1932 and 33 catalog, and then it disappeared. Never before that, never after that. So there was only one time period, 32 and 33, that this was available. I only know of two of these. The one that's in our museum, the Museum of Aquarium and Pet History, and one that came up given to this woman from her great aunt, and I just saw it briefly, so I don't know. I think she still has it. Now, when we talk about the bowl, the smaller one, I've heard of one of them that came up for sale and sold, and then there was also a stand that looked like it might have been a howl stand. It was thinner, more delicate, beautiful stand, and it had this bowl on it. So that was the third item that I've seen that had come with this smaller bowl. So what you have here is you have two iconic pieces of glass that are fish bowls that just are not out there. They're pretty much museum pieces. There are a few people that own them, but not many. And again, the reason that I wanted to cover these today was to show you some of the pieces in the museum that we really highlight and to really tip the hat to Jack Wilson, who's helped me over the years as far as answering questions about Rubaromic. He's just a plethora of knowledge. He is selling his collection, so all his information is at the end of the website. Again, I thank you for watching. So don't forget to watch, or don't, cut. So I thank you for watching. Don't forget to read the March release, which has the article from Emiliano on the Rome Aquarium, Part 1, which was a short-lived aquarium in Rome. It's pretty interesting. And also the article from Joe Fredenzi, our friend, who also wrote an article on one of the iconic aquarium shops that was in New York. So that's it for this month, and we will see you in April.
Amazingly, it was a block of plaster that a glass designer stumbled into that led to the creation of the best Art Deco glass in America, called Rubaromic. The circumstances of its birth and early demise might sound like fiction, but it is not. It all happened. Learn about the genesis of this strikingly beautiful glass that screams Art Deco, with its wild angles and colors, as well as its untimely fade into obscurity in the stock crash of 1929. The end of World War I brought change. Americans had tired of the gray war clouds and the blackness of war death. While the red bloodlines of sacrifice brought victory, it was now time for change. The roaring 20s brought wars of the flapper, changing music with jazz, and changing tastes in art with Art Deco. Art Deco interest was kicked off with great exposition in Paris, the Exposition Internationale des Arts Décoratifs et Industriels Modernes took place in Paris in 1925. The terms Art Moderne and Art Deco originated from that exposition, anglicised versions of the French Art Modernes and Art Décoratifs. The ownership of the United States Glass Company changed hands in 1925. The new owners offered its head designer and vice president, Reuben Haley, the presidency of the company. Haley had come a long way from his days as a die maker for Pearpoint, but he did not like the ethics of the new owner. Reuben was a design genius and stubbornly independent. He therefore decided to resign in order to start his own design firm called Metal Products Company in Coraopolis, Pennsylvania. His company completed designs for several companies in the glass and pottery industry, including Consolidated Glass Company in Coraopolis, 15 miles outside of Pittsburgh. Consolidated Glass Company was in a large wooden building, easily able to accommodate rental space for Haley's Metal Products Company. The building also housed multiple glass furnaces, and fire was a real concern. His design room was littered with plaster and clay models of glass and pottery designs in progress. Cleaved chunks of plaster lay scattered all over the floor. It was a messy, dusty place with tools of the design trade such as mallets and chisels of different sizes and shapes strewn haphazardly all over the tables. Design artists created new visions of glass and pottery here. Cleanliness was never a top priority. What was the origin of Rubaromic? There is no doubt that Reuben Haley designed Rubaromic given his 3 design patents. But the moment of origin of this Art Deco design, the actual design genesis, has been speculative to this point. For example, Alistair Duncan, in his book American Art Deco, comments that Rubaromic is, quote, strongly reminiscent of Eric Magnuson's The Lights and Shadows of Manhattan silver coffee service and its sharp and irregular angularity. From this you could mistakenly get the impression that Reuben Haley copied Magnuson's design. This is not borne out by the facts. To find out the real origins of Rubaromic required tracking down people that had knowledge of Reuben Haley's design of Rubaromic for Consolidated Glass Company. I interviewed Reuben Haley's son, Kenneth Haley, about his father's design work for Consolidated. While his father was doing design work for Consolidated and other companies, Kenneth was working for Phoenix Glass Company as a designer. Kenneth's wife, Mary, was the daughter of the president of a Consolidated Glass Company. Kenneth was intimately familiar with the design work his father did. They lived close to each other. Also, Kenneth was the designer of the only piece of Rubaromic produced by Phoenix Glass Company, its rare aquarium or fishbowl. I also talked to Jerry Przybylak, the son of Walter Przybylak, who worked with Reuben Haley as a designer, model maker, and pattern maker. Jerry has documented comments his father made about the origin of Rubaromic. Quote, "One anecdote that Walt told on several occasions concerned the creative beginnings of the legendary Rubaromic line. According to Walter, Reuben picked up a large chunk of scrap plaster from the floor of the shop and began chopping away randomly with a chisel. After a few minutes, Reuben asked the others in the shop what they thought of the bold slab-sided form he had cut out of the plaster. Later, Reuben completed sketches and sold the idea to Consolidated, but the original idea emerged from a piece of plaster picked up off the floor." Rubaromic was shown in early 1928 at the Pittsburgh Glass Show at the Fort Pitt Hotel. The initial presentation to the wholesale trade included 30 different items. Rubaromic was introduced to the trade with great fanfare, including an unprecedented 7-page ad spread in the February 1928 issue of Gift and Art Shop. Unfortunately, the production of Rubaromic didn't last very long. One thing that interfered was the Great Depression, October 1929. Weatherman came out with their book in 1974 that showed the first glimpses of Rubaromic to current collectors, showing this advertisement. Depression glass collectors were the first ones to collect Rubaromic. The 1986 Brooklyn Museum's The Machine Age in America 1918 to 1941 exhibition featured examples of Rubaromic glassware, including one 16-inch jade vase. In 1987, April 4th through June 28th, the exhibition traveled to the Carnegie Museum of Art in Pittsburgh. Its acting director, Philip Johnson, asked to borrow several pieces of Rubaromic from my collection. They were needed for a complimentary exhibit called Made for the Modern Interior Machine Age Production from the Ohio River Valley. I loaned the museum over a dozen items from my collection and attended the preview party on April 2nd. In 1989, I published my book and showed lots of examples of Rubaromic, including these pages from my collection. I also had a lot of trade journal advertisements that I included in my book that showed the original introduction. Bob Abel, Modern Gallery in Philadelphia, conducted a Rubaromic at Modern exhibition and sale of several hundred pieces of Rubaromic in 1992. I attended the preview party. This was a landmark event because many museums acquired pieces for their permanent collections, and Rubaromic established itself as a very hot collectible. He employed a professional PR firm that sent out publicity releases, including these photographs of glass from the sale. Rubaromic prices hit new records based on the prices achieved at that sale, and several museums acquired pieces for their permanent collections. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this introduction to Rubaromic glassware, the most significant Art Deco glassware ever made in America. Our next video is going to focus on the exhibit Rubaromic at Modern in 1992. At the time of the Rubaromic at Modern exhibition and sale in 1992, I had one of the largest collections of Rubaromic in the country. I have continued to add rarities to my collection in the 23 plus years since. I have always concentrated on finding the rarest items made. My collection is both broad and deep. I have examples of all the pieces made, usually with examples in several colors. I own pairs of the 16-inch vases and of the fish bowls on floor stands. This presentation opens with a slideshow collage to give you a flavor of my collection, then we'll go into detail on what I actually own. I hope you enjoy it. My collection is housed in a set of custom cabinets with mirrored backs and special lighting. This is a brief panorama of those cabinets. These are shape 817 juice glasses, 3 1/4 inch high. Tumblers. Here are 818 sundaes, 3 inch high, and the very hard to find 819 bouillons. These are serving pieces, perfumes, and small vases, the 6.5 inch high vases. Here again are serving pieces, matched cigarette boxes and ashtrays. Here is silver, very hard to find, in a whiskey set, vases, and a toilet water bottle. Here are the 6.5 inch vases. There are lots of them. There are actually 16 of them in there. Perfumes. These are the water jugs in 7 different colors. Whiskey sets. White opal and jade. Whiskey sets again. Smoky topaz. These are 15-inch platters, 5 different examples. Lighting glassware including 14-inch shades, 10-inch shades, and the 2 sizes of sconces. The medium-sized vases, 9.5 inches, and a pair of the very rare 16-inch vases. Whiskey sets in lilac and French crystal. Again, the silver, extremely rare, hard to find. Whiskey sets in jungle green. Here we have a sunshine whiskey sets. This is the only color I don't have a tray for the whiskey sets. I have several decanters but no tray. A couple of jungle green whiskey sets, one with labels on all the pieces. Powder jars and the very rare compotes. Matched creamers and sugars. Matched candlesticks in almost all the colors. Dinner plates, flared bowls, cupped in bowls, in lots of different colors. Now we're going to take a look at the pieces in my collection starting with the shapes in numerical order. We'll start with the 6.5 inch number 800 base. You can see I have quite a few of these. Next shape is the 801 base. It's 9.5 inches tall. I've also got a lot of these. It takes a couple pictures to show the various colors I've got. And then, of course, the real rarity, 802 16-inch face. You only see these in museums. They're that rare. Next up is the 803 cupped-in bowl. Then the oblong, oval, or banana boat in various colors. These are spectacular. Sets of candlesticks in various colors. Shape 805. The bread and butter plate, the 806 7-inch bread and butter plate. And here's the salad plate. The one on the upper left is a tangerine color. It's a sunshine, but it's much darker. Here are dinner plates, the 10-inch dinner plates in various colors. And after the dinner plates are the 809 15-inch platters. These are spectacular. Now we have finger bowls. Shape 810. Shape 811 is the 9-inch flared bowl. And then after that we have the 812 jug. Here I have 7 colors. Most people have never seen this jug. Here are 7 of them. Here's the 813 4-inch flat tumbler. And the 814 flat iced tea. The 815 6-inch footed tumbler, silver and smoky topaz. Extremely rare 816 footed goblet, 7¼ inches tall. Juice glasses, shape 817, smoky topaz, sunshine, jade. The 818 sundae. $819 bouillons with Benedict modernistic silver plate bouillon spoons, which complement them very well. The 820 compote. $821 sugars and creamers. Match sets. 823 whiskey glasses in various colors. Here's a spectacular whiskey set with original labels on 7 of the whiskey glasses. We're going to zoom in here a little bit to take a look at that. This is a really unique whiskey set. Only one I've ever seen like this. This is 826 toilet water bottle, or what we call cologne today. 827 perfumes. A couple actually have the original labels on them. 828 cigarette box and 829 ashtray, match colors. These are very hard to find. The 830 powder jar in 5 of these. The serving pieces, almonds, bonbon, celery, spare parts, perfume bottoms, stoppers for either the cologne or whiskey decanter. Rubaromic lighting glassware was not introduced until 1931 and is rarer even than the normal Rubaromic glassware. We'll start with the 2842 at 10-inch kitchen shade. This one is in sunshine. That's followed by the small size 2846 wall sconce. And then we're going to take a look at the large 14-inch 2850 shade, French crystal and sunshine. Boudoir lamp or table lamp shade. And we have the 2853 large wall sconce. This had to be commercial, very spectacular pieces. Phoenix Glass Company made one piece of Rubaromic. It's spectacular. It's the aquarium or fishbowl. This is the one that's on the cover of my book. It's sitting on the cast iron howl stand. Here's a look at the howl stand. I actually have a pair of these. The other one's packed up. I've got the stand and the fishbowl. Benedict modernistic silver plate is very complementary to Rubaromic. It's got that angular design that complements cubism. Here are Rubaromic bouillons with the modernistic bouillon spoons. Next we're going to take a look at a whole bunch of bouillon spoons next to an original dealer sign for Benedict, their silver plate line. And then we're going to look at part of the tableware I have of Benedict modernistic. So this is not everything I have, but a good sampling. And then we'll look at some of the other pieces. Here's a ice pitcher. I have several pieces, but this is just an example. Kopp modernistic glass was produced by Kopp Glass Company in Swissdale, PA. It's complementary to Rubaromic, very cubistic. Here are the large square vases, about 8.5 inches tall, an 11-inch tall lamp, and the vases on the end are just under 10 inches. Here's the normal sized lamps and vases in a whole array of colors, in both frosted and crystal. Here are very rare stick vases in 3 different colors, including black. And now we're going to look at one of a kind, I think, floor lamp from Kopp. It would look very nice next to a stickly settee or couch. Here's a close-up of the shade on that floor lamp. And then we're going to take a look at some of the desk lamps, bedside lamps, boudoir lamps that Kopp made. And finally, we're going to take a look at a shade and vases that were also produced by Kopp as part of their glass production. We will conclude with a slideshow of some of my more interesting Rubaromic pieces. I hope you have enjoyed this overview of my collection of Rubaromic. It is even more breathtaking in person, and if you are seriously interested, I encourage you to call to discuss a visit. My phone number is area code 928-445-5137. This collection will be sold via a private treaty sale to a single buyer. Price upon request, but it is mid-6 figures. I will include my collection of Kopp modernistic glass and my collection of Benedict modernistic silver plate. Both are complementary to Rubaromic. It is a collection with impeccable provenance. Here is an opportunity to own the ultimate collection of American Art Deco glass, a collection that can never be duplicated. It is truly unique.
This is a 40-year collection from the author of the book that did the original research on Rubaromic. It consists of over 400 pieces of Rubaromic and is heavy on hard-to-find pieces. It is complemented by collections of Cop modernistic glass, Benedict modernistic silver plate, and examples of Rubaromic pretenders. It is a generational opportunity to acquire something truly unique, something that is simply the best. Reuben Haley designed Rubaromic for Consolidated Glass Company and was introduced in January 1928. On October 29, 1929, Black Tuesday was the start of the Great Depression, and on April 2, 1932, Consolidated Glass Company shut down for 4 years. This was the end of the Rubaromic production. Perhaps 1,500 to 2,000 pieces of Rubaromic still exist. Here is a collection of over 400 pieces with impeccable provenance. Compare that to the Lalique glass with our 30 to 40,000 examples existing. Numerous museums have added Rubaromic to their permanent collections. Rubaromic has achieved record prices when it comes up at auctions. The right sale of a French crystal partial decanter set with damage for $16,250 is one example. After this video concludes, you will have the opportunity to view 2 additional videos. The first is an introduction to the genesis and chronology of Rubaromic. The second provides an overview of my collection of Rubaromic art glass. After the video, you can look at extensive photo galleries. There are several galleries. Firstly, the Rubaromic itself. Secondly, the related Cop modernistic glass. Thirdly, the Benedict modernistic silver plate. And lastly, the Rubaromic pretenders. My collection is located in Prescott, Arizona, which is 100 miles north of Phoenix. Prescott has a regional airport, Love Field, that accommodates commercial airlines and private aircraft, including jets. The collection is priced in the mid-6 figures. Call me directly at area code 928-499-5121 to discuss particulars or with any questions you may have. Thank you and enjoy the videos.